At Huntsville, Texas, the metal door opens each time a human life is about to end. Since 1982, more than 580 death row inmates have been executed here, turning Texas into the largest execution machine in America. But among them exists a particularly terrifying group: serial killers. Not just one, not two, but 3, 4, even 5 victims, sometimes more. Every individual in today's list once cast fear over their community, baffled law enforcement, and left behind cases no one wants to revisit. And when the clock struck the execution hour, what did they eat for their last meal? What did they say, or did they choose silence? This list takes you through the top 10 serial killers who were executed in Texas, names erased from the living world, yet never forgotten by justice. Before we begin, drop a comment below which country or state are you watching from. Let's see how far these stories have reached. 1. Kenneth Allen McDuff. Kenneth Allen McDuff was born and raised in Rosebud, Texas, a small town where peace once seemed like a given. But for McDuff, youth was anything but quiet. He was expelled from school and convicted multiple times for theft and assault. His violent, abrasive nature, paired with a twisted confidence that the law could never touch him, became the slow-burning fuse for the horror that followed. On the night of August 6, 1966 in Fort Worth, 3 teenagers, 2 boys and 1 girl, were sitting in a car chatting after a night out. They were just stepping into their youth, where everything still felt bright and full of dreams. But the headlights approaching from behind, followed by urgent footsteps, signaled the end of that chapter. Kenneth McDuff, 20 years old, and another teen, Alva Hank Worley, approached. In their hands were guns. In McDuff's mind was calculated cruelty. They forced the teens into the trunk and drove to a remote area. There, the 2 boys were shot dead without hesitation. The girl, Edna Louise Sullivan, just 16 years old, was subjected to such brutal violence that it shocked the public. McDuff's cruelty would later earn him the nickname the Broomstick Killer. When arrested, McDuff showed no panic, no remorse. In court, he acted indifferent, as if the murders were just a prank gone too far. The court sentenced him to death. But fate twisted. In 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Furman v. Georgia overturned many death sentences, including McDuff's. He escaped death and his sentence was commuted to life in prison. A decade passed. Then a tragic failure in the system unfolded. In 1989, amid efforts to reduce prison overcrowding, McDuff was paroled. He walked free, not to redeem himself, but to kill again. Over the next 3 years, at least 6 young women disappeared. Names like Serafia Parker, Colleen Reed, and Brenda Thompson became part of Texas's collective grief. Local police could no longer keep up. The FBI stepped in. A national hotline was created to track the killers spreading death across the American South. In 1992, after another violent crime in Kansas City, McDuff was identified by his fingerprints and arrested. Even in handcuffs, he wore the same expression as before, calm, almost mocking. In prison, he confessed to multiple murders and revealed burial sites as if negotiating with horror itself. But this time, Texas did not grant mercy. McDuff received a second death sentence. And this time, all doors of compassion were closed. On November 17, 1998, McDuff was led into the execution chamber at the Huntsville unit. His last meal, 2 well-done T-bone steaks with all the sides, mirrored the indulgence of someone who had once spread terror. When asked for final words, he simply said, "I'm ready to be released. Release me." His words, soft, simple, held a haunting weight. For McDuff, freedom didn't mean redemption. It meant death. Kenneth Allen McDuff, a serial killer once freed due to prison overcrowding, became a chilling lesson: when justice makes room for monsters, the price can be human lives. Second, Ángel Maturino Reséndiz. After being convicted for the murder of Dr. Claudia Benton in late 1998, near the railroad tracks in West University Place, Ángel Maturino Reséndiz became the target of a nationwide manhunt. He lived a nomadic life, traveling by freight trains, each stop marking a new crime scene. With no ID, no phone, and no fixed residence, he was extremely difficult to trace. From 1986 to the mid-1990s, Reséndiz admitted to at least 15 murders across 6 states: Texas, Kentucky, Illinois, Florida, Georgia, and California. Some survived to tell their stories, including Holly Dunn in Kentucky. Most of his victims were elderly individuals, doctors, or people walking alone near railroad tracks. He committed his crimes with extreme violence and often behaved inappropriately at the crime scenes, even taking victims' jewelry home to his wife and mother. On June 21, 1999, Reséndiz was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list. But what ultimately led to his capture was his own family. His sister Manuela recognized the suspect profile aired by El Paso police and responded to a request for contact. Reséndiz agreed to surrender under 2 conditions: medical attention and an $86,000 reward. On July 13, 1999, Texas Ranger Drew Carter led the operation that brought Reséndiz back to Texas. In May 2000, at the Houston courthouse, Reséndiz was sentenced to death. Holly Dunn, the only surviving victim, appeared in court to recount his brutal acts. Defense attorneys claimed he had schizophrenia, believed himself to be half angel and half human, and had been unfairly judged. However, the jury ruled that he had acted with intent and cold calculation and should be held fully accountable. On June 27, 2006, at the Huntsville unit, after the U.S. Supreme Court denied his final appeal, Reséndiz was executed by lethal injection at 7:58 p.m. local time and pronounced dead 7 minutes later. He declined a final meal. Before death, Reséndiz turned to the victims' families and said, "I know I allowed the devil to rule my life. I just ask you to forgive me and ask the Lord to forgive me for allowing the devil to deceive me. I thank God for having patience with me. I don't deserve to cause you pain. You did not deserve this. I deserve what I am getting." He knelt, bowed his head, and accepted his sentence in prayer. His wife and his mother, waiting outside, expressed both relief and sorrow when the sentence was carried out. Ángel Maturino Reséndiz, the borderless killer who called himself a punishing angel, ultimately accepted the death he believed he deserved, after a trail of murders, broken families, and long-lasting fear. His final judgment became not just an end to a reign of terror, but a sobering reflection on the reach and limits of justice. Third, Elroy Chester. Elroy Chester was born on June 14, 1969, in Port Arthur, Texas. He became a controversial figure not only for his crimes, but also due to questions surrounding his mental health and low intellectual capacity. What started as petty theft escalated into home invasions and assaults. By the end of 1997, he had begun a spree that terrorized the community. Between August 1997 and February 1998, Chester committed more than 25 break-ins. Many of his victims were minors. He also carried out several murders, often targeting white individuals. One of the most notable victims was Willie Ryman III, a 38-year-old firefighter. One evening in 1998, after 2 of Ryman's young cousins were assaulted and killed, Ryman tried to intervene and was murdered. DNA fingerprints and recovered weapons continuously tied Chester to the crimes. In court, Chester admitted to everything, yet claimed he was just a victim of racial discrimination and showed no remorse. His confessions were cold and deliberate. He was sentenced to death in September 1998. Defense attorneys argued that his IQ, estimated between 57 and 70, made him ineligible for execution under Atkins versus Virginia. But the courts rejected the appeal, citing the calculated nature of his crimes as proof of legal responsibility. On June 12, 2013, at the Huntsville unit, Texas, Chester was executed by lethal injection. In his final moments, he addressed the Ryman family in a calm yet emotional voice. "Don't hate me. I'm sorry for taking your loved one. Elroy Chester wasn't a bad man. I really did it. God watches everything. Moments later, he told the prison staff, "Go ahead," began humming a hymn and quietly drifted into unconsciousness as the drugs took effect. He was pronounced dead at 7:04 p.m., 27 minutes after the injection began. Elroy Chester, a brutal murderer with a low IQ, left behind a legacy of legal and moral complexity. His case remains a disturbing example of how the law grapples with justice, mercy, and the rights of those with intellectual disabilities. Fourth, Leon David Dorsey IV. Leon Dorsey was born on November 17, 1975, in Dallas, Texas. He called himself Pistol Pete, and true to the name, his bullets spoke louder than words. On the night of April 4, 1994, while most people stayed home, Dorsey slipped into a newly opened Blockbuster video store in the White Rock area. In the stillness of night, gunfire shattered the silence. Brad Lindsay, 20 years old, and James Armstrong, 26, were forced into a back room. Ordered to open the safe, which turned out to be empty, they were shot with brutal finality. Dorsey stole just over $400, then walked away without remorse. Ballistic evidence traced the 9mm rounds back to Dorsey's weapon. Yet he denied involvement, saying, "I didn't do it." For nearly 3 years, the case went cold until the FBI enhanced the surveillance footage and identified Dorsey as the shooter. By September 1994, Dorsey struck again, murdering Hyun-Suk Chon, a store clerk in Ellis County. This time, police connected the dots. Only one person fit the pattern. Once arrested, Dorsey confessed to killing Chon. When shown the FBI's video, he also admitted to the Blockbuster murders. A victim's mother said, "My son was gentle. That man was cruel. He killed for pleasure, not survival." In June 2000, after a trial in Dallas, Dorsey was sentenced to death. He accepted his crimes with chilling indifference. At Huntsville Pistol, Pete was far from calm. With more than 95 disciplinary violations from smuggling weapons to inciting riots, he remained under high-security watch. But on August 12, 2008, he entered the execution chamber with a disturbingly serene expression. The fathers of Lindsay and Armstrong sat behind the glass waiting to hear his final words. When asked, Dorsey turned to them and said in a tone eerily gentle, "Yeah, I love all y'all. I forgive all y'all. See y'all when you get there. Do what y'all gonna do." As the needle pierced his vein, he closed his eyes. His words lingered in the air, a haunting farewell from a man who never showed regret. Pistol. Pete died without remorse, leaving behind one burning question: what justice can silence the cold laughter of someone like him? Fifth, Kenneth Granviel. Kenneth Granviel was born on August 4, 1950, in Fort Worth, Texas. Once a shy child with few friends, he gradually turned into a cold-blooded killer. Between October 1974 and mid-1975, he murdered 7 people, including 3 women and 2 children. Many were people who had once trusted him as a friend. One of the most horrific cases occurred on October 7, 1974, when Granviel broke into the McClendon family home and left a trail of death, including young children, that shocked the public. He did not run. He did not hide. On February 8, 1975, just months later, Granviel turned himself in after committing a rape and hostage-taking at a Fort Worth apartment complex. But his surrender felt less like repentance and more like a man satisfied with what he had done and ready to stop on his own terms. Over the next 2 decades, Granviel remained one of the longest-serving death row inmates in Texas, exactly 20 years and 6 months. He filed numerous appeals, all of which were denied. Along the way, he admitted to other murders, including 2 former girlfriends, deepening the shadow of his past. On February 27, 1996, at the Huntsville unit, Granviel entered the execution chamber. When asked for final words, he simply shook his head, no apology, no farewell, not even a glance of remorse. Just quiet detachment, as if death was nothing more than his next stop. Earlier, he had requested a final meal, a double cheeseburger, french fries, chocolate cake, and wine. A simple meal, yet strangely indulgent in the context. Kenneth Granviel, who murdered 7 people including children with callous indifference, ended his journey in silence. But behind him, the memories remained raw, and for the families he shattered, perhaps nothing could erase the silence of a man who killed half their world without a word. 6th, Danny Lee Barber. Danny Lee Barber was born on May 8, 1955, and grew up around the Dallas area in Texas. His life was soon consumed by crime, petty theft, and twisted sexual behavior. But it was a string of bizarre murders between 1978 and 1980 that turned him into a serial killer. Known as a necrophile, someone who displayed abnormal behavior toward victims' bodies, Barber instilled deep fear throughout Dallas County. In October 1979, Janice Louise Ingram, a woman living in Balch Springs, became his first known victim. She was brutally murdered in her own home, and forensic evidence later revealed that the crime didn't end with her death. The disturbing post-mortem behavior made the case a chilling topic for public concern. Over the following 2 years, from the summer of 1978 to the spring of 1980, Barber continued his spree, killing a total of 4 confirmed victims. He repeatedly evaded capture, frustrating investigators. But on May 4, 1980, his run came to an end when he was arrested in Dallas, a pivotal moment in closing the chapter on his reign of terror. At trial, Barber was sentenced to death for first-degree murder. Key factors included his disturbing behavior toward the bodies, pointing to a dangerously pathological mindset. His appeals were denied, and the death sentence was upheld. After years on death row in Houston, he was transferred to the Huntsville unit, where he was executed by lethal injection on February 11, 1999. Details of his last meal were not publicly recorded, likely because Texas did not release such records in certain cases at the time. However, Barber's final words startled many. He expressed remorse and a desire to atone. "I'm sorry for whatever pain I've caused. I am regretful for what I done, but I'm a different person from that time." Though too late to undo the pain he caused, those words offered a glimpse of regret. As the chemicals entered his bloodstream, Barber closed his eyes, his lips sealing the end of a dark, violent journey. Danny Lee Barber remains one of Texas's lesser-known serial killers, yet his crimes left a grim legacy in Dallas's criminal history. He spread fear, challenged justice, and in the end served as a reminder: some forms of pathology leave no room for mercy. 7. Coy Wayne Wesbrook. Coy Wayne Wesbrook was born in 1957 in Texas. He was responsible for the deaths of 5 people, including his ex-wife and her friends, all within a single night in 1997. This was not a random act of violence. It was the eruption of years of emotional pressure, frustration, and jealousy. That night, Wesbrook had been invited to his ex-wife's apartment in Channelview, hoping for reconciliation. But what he found instead was a party with her and 2 male friends behaving intimately right in front of him. According to his defense attorneys, the combination of alcohol, the party atmosphere, and a bruised sense of dignity pushed him over the edge. Yet his actions weren't a mere flash of rage. Wesbrook left the apartment, walked out to his vehicle, retrieved a high-powered hunting rifle, the kind used for deer, and returned. In seconds, he turned the scene into a massacre that shocked the community. He claimed self-defense, saying he had been provoked and humiliated. But the court disagreed. Jealousy is not justification for mass murder. More importantly, the fact that he left and returned armed showed clear intent. Medical experts dismissed the idea of temporary insanity. After receiving a death sentence in 1998, Wesbrook declined to appeal. "Don't bring me back," he told the court, expressing a firm decision to close his story on death row. No pleas, no delays. For him, perhaps death was the only way to shut the door opened by that irreversible night. On March 9, 2016, at the Huntsville unit, he chose a final meal, both simple and full grilled chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, green beans, black-eyed peas, sliced bread, and a citrus cake. When asked for his last words, Wesbrook looked toward his loved ones behind the glass and said, "Yeah, first off, I want to say that I'm sorry for the pain that I have caused you people." I am sorry that I cannot bring everybody back. I wish it could be different. I know it would be hard for you to understand what went on that night. I love my daughter and all of my supporters. I pray that the Lord take care of me and all of you. I have no bad sentiment towards anyone. God be with all of us." His words were not just an apology, they were a full acceptance of guilt and a plea for forgiveness. As the injection took effect, Wesbrook closed his eyes a full stop to the fury that had once consumed 7 lives. He departed quietly, leaving behind grief, outrage, and a kind of forgiveness few ever find after a massacre. 8. Terry Lee Hankins. Terry Lee Hankins was born on October 10, 1974, and grew up carrying emotional scars. He claimed he had been abused by a stepfather, and while family might have been his refuge, it instead became the origin of tragedy. As an adult, he worked as a mechanic and married Tammy Bryce at the age of 18, becoming stepfather to her 2 children. But in 2001, their marriage fell apart when Tammy chose to leave him. On August 26, 2001, Hankins could not control his rage. The grim family drama began. He returned to what was once his home, carrying a .45 caliber handgun, and ended the lives of people he had once called family, including Devin, 13 years old, and Ashley, 11. He later said, "I felt the blast and the smell of gunpowder as if he had lost control of his own body." But it didn't end there. Months later, during questioning, Hankins confessed to killing his biological father, Ernie Lee Hankins, and failing to dispose of the body. He also admitted to involvement in earlier family-related incidents, deepening the horror of the case. What stood out was not just the brutality, but his cold admission. "I feel bad for them," he said. "I know I'm the bad guy, but I can't take it back." In May 2002, he was sentenced to death for 3 counts of capital murder. He did not appeal aggressively. The only message he left was, "Don't bring me back," a resigned acceptance of his path toward execution. On June 2, 2009, at the Huntsville unit, Hankins entered the execution chamber. His final meal was a Southern-style spread, fried chicken pork ribs, a cheeseburger, fried okra French fries, and a brownie. In his final moments, his voice was calm but clear. "Yes, I am sorry for what I've done and for all of the pain and suffering that my actions have caused. Jesus is Lord. All glory to God." Those words marked the end of a bloody journey from a man who once called his victims family. 9. Derrick Dewayne Charles. Derrick Dewayne Charles, born around 1983 in Texas, became the focus of one of Houston's most shocking family murder cases of the early 21st century. On July 2, 2002, in a moment of uncontrolled fury reportedly sparked by an argument involving his girlfriend Charles, killed all 3 members of her family: his 15-year-old girlfriend, Maisha Bennett, her mother, Brenda Bennett, and her 77-year-old grandfather, Obika Lee Bennett. The case stunned the public with its extreme violence, as described in Charles's own confession. The brutality left many struggling to understand not just the scale, but the fact that the victims were people closest to him. Charles was arrested the very next day, hiding in a nearby motel and driving the victim's car. He did not resist, just silence. After his 2003 trial, he was sentenced to death. His attorneys made multiple appeals on the grounds of mental illness, citing signs from childhood. But the courts upheld the verdict. The United States Supreme Court declined to intervene, clearing the way for his execution. On May 12, 2015, at the Huntsville unit, Charles became one of the first Texas death row inmates to be executed without a special final meal due to a policy change in 2011. He received the standard prison meal without complaint. When asked for final words, Charles appeared calm, almost cold. He simply said, "Nah, I'm ready to go home." No apology, no eye contact, just that one sentence, then silence. A yawn, a deep sigh. His eyes closed. The poison flowed through his veins. He was pronounced dead at 6:36 p.m., 25 minutes after the injection. Derrick Dewayne Charles, just 32 years old, ended a dark path that had begun at age 19. No explanation, no remorse, and no one truly knows what dragged him so far down. 10th. James Bigby. James Eugene Bigby was born on April 8, 1955 in Fort Worth, Texas. He carried out a series of shocking crimes during Christmas of 1987. On the night of December 24, 1987, Bigby entered the home of his friend Michael Trickell, 26 years old, and shot him dead. Hearing Trickell's infant son, 4-month-old Jason, crying, Bigby turned his violence on the baby. The act outraged the public especially because it involved a child. That same night, he killed 2 more friends believing they were conspiring against him in a workers' compensation lawsuit. Bigby was arrested on December 26, 1987 after a confrontation with a SWAT team at a motel. He confessed to the crime saying, "I know I am guilty, and so do you." At his 1991 trial, Bigby made multiple attempts to disrupt the proceedings, even attempting to attack someone during court. His erratic behavior pointed not only to his danger but to his severe mental instability. Though his attorneys argued that he suffered from schizophrenia, the jury sentenced him to death. Bigby remained calm and never attempted to evade punishment. Due to a technical error in jury instructions, he was granted a retrial in 2006, but again received the death penalty. On March 14, 2017 at 6:17 p.m., at the Huntsville Unit, Texas, Bigby was administered a dose of pentobarbital. 14 minutes later at 6:31 p.m., he was pronounced dead. In his final statement, Bigby turned to the victims' families and said with sincerity, "I'm sorry it went on for a terribly long time. I hope that my death will bring you peace and closure. I hope that you could forgive me, but if you don't, I understand. I don't think I could forgive anyone who would have killed my children." He also wrote a letter to Grace Kaler, the mother of the infant, saying, "Frito-Lay caused my actions. It was not about money." Due to Texas's policy ending special last meals in 2011, Bigby was served the standard prison meal: pepper steak, steamed rice, brown gravy, carrots, green beans, oven-fried potatoes, sliced bread, pineapples, and a choice of water, tea, or punch. James Bigby, a man with a history of mental illness who committed brutal crimes, died offering a heartfelt apology, hoping to bring some comfort to those left behind. His story leaves behind a question. Where do we draw the line between justice and the healing power of mercy? 10 death sentences, 10 stories of death row, and dozens of lives left shattered. Behind every execution lies not only a perpetrator but those who remain. Parents who lost children, children who lost families, and memories forever imprisoned in grief. No sentence can erase that. No apology can truly mend it. But these stories must be told not to exploit pain, but to remind us justice is not only about punishment. Justice is also about listening, compassion, and a warning for future generations. If you believe these stories deserve to be remembered, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. What are your thoughts on forgiveness? Can justice walk hand in hand with mercy? Leave your thoughts, because in doing so we ensure the lost are never forgotten.